Our Heavenly Father, you have given us incredible opportunity to know your divine principle, to know our true parents, to know the purpose of life and how we can make ideal families. So please be with us as we share this information, guide us through it, touch each person's heart and mind in the way that you know how to touch them, Father, so that we can create better families, better spirit all around us for the sake of the coming of your kingdom and the realization of ideal relationships by all those that we know, Father. We thank you so much. Deepest gratitude. I pray in the name of Jim and Hiromi Stevens, a blessed Central family. Jew.
Jew.
All right.
It's the other people coming, thinking it's going to start.
I don't know. So what I'm going to share is God's original design for sex. And this is, I say 3 times a week, because this was a revelation that I had. Let's see here. Where we got to turn this on. I distinctly remember, I don't know what we were talking about. We were driving home from church in Maryland. And suddenly, we were having this conversation on something about sex. I don't remember exactly. And it was like God downloaded to me the jigsaw puzzle that I could see the whole picture. And I realized, I felt like this was the culmination of all my life so far. That all of the stuff we had learned from marriage enrichment programs, my being an engineer, the relationships we had, study of the divine principle, all of it seemed to fit together into this one picture that I could understand. And it was somehow these pieces all fit together for me. So then I made this up, this revelation. So I forgot to say what my wife and I had been living in our relationship or trying to do based on all of love languages and all that kind of stuff, trying to have an ideal relationship. So suddenly I got to go to a higher level of view like God has in what's going on. And this goes way back. 2005, we were in the Blessed Family Department at that time. We gave a talk to what used to be called the Educators Conferences at UTS, and they had people coming in from everywhere giving talks. And we decided somehow we'd give this talk about sex. It was so funny that there were people, it was standing room only. It was amazing. So that was one of the background things that had happened to us. And my wife was so brave. She talked about sex, which in the first Japanese probably in America who said the word sex. And so it was really quite exciting for us. Father had started talking about sex in the 1990s, and Father talked about sex until everybody was embarrassed. And nobody else would talk about it. It was like, wait a minute, aren't we the family church, right? Nobody's talking about sex. So we broke the ice, I feel, in our church as far as talking about sex. So I know people disagree about 3 times a week. That doesn't bother me. Actually, when God gave me this, many couples are fine with less sex. They have good reasons for it. Partner doesn't like it. And I'm not saying this is God's commandment. I'm not saying anything like that. Okay. It's not God's word. People have a hard time dealing with those kind of suggestions. So I'm not saying that. But I felt when I sort of protested a little bit my feeling to God, I don't know if I want to say this publicly. God said, just put it out there. And understand that that's how things change in the world. The idea has to come out from somebody, then God can work. People think, yeah, that's right. I knew that all along. Or something similar. So, another thing that came along with that feeling for me was that because, especially our members in our church, weren't understanding this and weren't relating to God as husband and wife through sex, God was lonely. And that was a strong feeling for me. God is so lonely for people, our brothers and sisters, to understand what He is all about, in a way, because just as an individual relates to God, but until the couple is relating to God, sexually particularly, God's not really getting the fullest joy out of it, and He feels lonely. So I really think, as blessed couples, part of our responsibility in our relationship with God is to have lots of sex. Because God created it for a reason. God does not want our sexual relationship limited, because it is what helps us to get closer to Him. And you're going to see in my later slides why I believe that with all of this information that I have. So one of the purposes of heavenly blessed sex is to make oneness with God. What is the image of God? Is it a man or is it a couple? It's a couple, right? So how does that couple reflect God's nature? That becoming one with your spouse is a greater reflection of God, right? Until we had the true parents victorious, God couldn't work in the world. I mean, we had Jesus, but still, look at the world. There's still a lot of problems. Now, with the true parents, we have more than doubled God's ability to work on the earth. Much more powerful way, right? So we all kind of get that. But the fact that there's a couple there that are totally united with God makes a huge difference in the world. And for the slide I already just showed you a little while ago, themarriagelibrary.com/ME. It's got to be capital M, capital E, for marriage enrichment. And you can find a lot of stuff on there. If I have time, I'm going to show you this video, 20 Reasons to Have Sex When You Don't Feel Like It. This one, I'm going to show you parts of this one, selected quotes from Father about sex, which is, I think it'll blow you away if you haven't seen some of that before. And much, much more. So I recommend, again, check that out once in a while. This I showed you last time. What is this? Think about this relationship, this true ideal relationship between a husband and wife. It's producing children, but this relationship should be bringing us great joy. We should be experiencing deeper and deeper connection to God through our relationship with each other. So, we've seen Jesus. This we didn't see. So whenever you're talking to a Christian, this is the highest ideal they got. The highest thing they can hope for, the highest teaching that they have is this. And yet we got this and all of this and this. So the unification teaching is way, 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 quantum leaps above what Christianity has to offer, and that's the best thing in the world right now. Right? So it is really, we are so beyond blessed to be able to know this and to be the first ones in history to know it, and hopefully we can understand it better and better from our experience. So, in God's original plan, men and women would reach the level of maturity and love and then marry. Right? We all read that. We all heard that in the Divine Principle. You're supposed to be perfect before you get married. Imagine the kind of relationship Jesus could have created with a woman like himself. But that was supposed to be Adam and Eve. And all of their children were supposed to be born with them as parents. Right? Suppose your parents were like Jesus and his bride, who was equal to Jesus. If your parents were like that, or your grandparents, or your great-grandparents, what a different world this would be. If there's no criminals in the whole world, every neighbor is like Jesus and his wife. Every neighbor, every business person, everything. Everywhere you go, everybody is super mature, like God intended. What a world. What a different world. Yeah. People aren't greedy. People aren't, all the technology is used for good. The environment, the schools, everything is bringing about God's ideal. So heavenly sex would be between two people who are already the image of God, like Jesus was, at one with God, able to easily communicate with God. How different your relationship would be, how improved it would be if you could talk to God all the time. If you had a struggle with your wife, your husband, and you just go to God and God tells you, try this. So many times in my relationship with my wife, when I prayed, I got such an amazing inspiration. Our children, same thing with our children. I had one, when the kids started going to school and they were going to get sex education, I did not want them to get sex education from school first. So I prayed about it. And God gave me the inspiration that I should take them out. When they get 10 years old, back then it was 10. It's younger than that. They're getting sex education now. But at 10 years old, so each one, as they turn 10 years old, I, the father, took that child out and explained all about sex until they said, okay, Dad, that's enough. So I wanted them to know, if you want to know about sex, I'll tell you about it, or your mom will tell you. Don't talk to your friends. Don't expect your teachers or some doctors to tell you. We know. This is, when you're sleeping, we get naked and this is what we do. And I explained all those details to them. And so it was like a rite of passage when they turned 10 years old. Each knew, as each one turned 10, then they had it in common with each other. And they could talk about it. It turned out to be really a divine inspiration. So that our whole family openly talks about sex around the table. It was no issue anymore. Most families have a very difficult time talking about sex. In the family even. Well, a husband and wife have a hard time, but parents and children almost really have a hard time. So that, because of the inspiration God gave me, it was not a particular issue in our family. And again, I credit God tremendously. Yananim, when she heard that testimony, she asked me to write it down for her. And it was actually, I think, translated into Korean and sent over to Korea. But again, I don't take any credit for that, except I did my part. I prayed about it. So, original sex would be really without baggage. Of course, we have baggage now. So here's some... in Father's words, the number one thing that Father talks about in the value of sex is intimacy and oneness between husband and wife, becoming one. That's the number one point for Father. Number two for Father was giving birth to sinless children and God's blood lineage. And the third one is actually keeping good health. Having sex is good for your health. Amazingly. Of course, if you think about it, if God wants you to have sex a lot, then it should be good for you. Right? And I'll show you, there's actually a whole list of 20 things why it's good for you to have sex. Long life. Father said you have a longer life if you have good sex. All right, here's some words about from Father about sex. There's 7. There's 25 quotes on that document that I have on my website. But some of these things that Father said about it, you go, whoa. Land of settlement, where God's ideal love can be perfected. What do we got out there? Nope. Somebody's walking? Okay. God's love can be perfected, begins from the place where concave and convex unite in a relationship of love established after marriage. First love relationship of man and woman becomes the place of perfection of the object partner of God. The place of perfection of God's partner. Right? This is what God was looking for. This was God's hope and ideal. He said, this is the core of the universe. Wait a minute, that's a big universe. There's a lot of things that God could think is the core of the universe. What did God make as the core of the universe? Husband-wife relationship. When this moves, the entire universe goes back and forth in harmony. the base of the kingdom of, the base of the kingdom of heaven on earth and in the spirit world. Whoa. Big deal. Sexual organs are the palace of love. A palace in which eternal life is born. Children, obviously. Eternal life. Our own spiritual life comes, benefits from this place. The palace that inherits the future descendants and lineage, which will succeed to the eternally unchanging traditions of heaven. The palace of true love, true life, and true lineage is the most precious place of all. You cannot do anything you like with it. You cannot use it without permission from God. From the time of Adam and Eve until the time of true Father, no one had permission to have sexual relationship. Nobody had permission. Nobody had permission to have children. Right? Not until true Father came was that victory successful. So, do we have grace or what? That we can do it freely. Where is the original place through which not only man and woman, but God Himself can be perfected? So until God has His object partner, He is not fully perfected. Right? So as we establish an ideal relationship, that changes us. We grow as a result of that. We become ideal only because of that relationship. Same thing with God. So, where can you perfect the love of God and man and woman? Where is the central place of settlement? This is the question. If you don't know the answer to this question, you cannot expand and extend the heavenly kingdom of the ideal of love on the earth. It's the sexual organs. So this is the basis of our pursuit of God. Searching for God involves a sexual relationship. It's searching together as husband and wife. These organs are the basis of life, love, lineage, and conscience. Of course, I selected these quotes, obviously. They're not so easy to find, but they are really there. And particularly that one blue book of Blessed Families. And there's a lot of this stuff in there. It's the root of life, the root of the ideal, the root of happiness. God's love descends to the place of a sexual relationship between husband and wife. Okay. This is where all creation and the universe are harmonized. So this is way beyond what I understand. But anyway. Man's treasure is not owned by him, it is owned by the woman. Her treasure belongs to him. In short, ownership has been exchanged. The woman does not own her sexual organ. She needs to know that it belongs to her man. It's not hers. The same is true for the man. So, to whom do those things belong? Dangling from men's bodies belong. This was previously not understood. Thinking that your sexual organ belongs to you is a sin. It's a grave sin for women to think their sexual organs belong to them. So, we know this was the original plan of God. We talked about that a little earlier. What happened with the fall? Individual relationship with God lost connection to God's love and truth. We lost the individual mind and body unity, constant struggle with sin. This was all lost too. This love and sex became corrupted, family breakdown, dysfunction, male-female, brother-brother violence, and abuse, all throughout history. God's blessing on any sexual relationship in marriage could never be given from the time of Adam and Eve when all that was lost. Adam and Eve did not reach the quality of heart and love where God could grant His blessing in marriage. We have not reached that level either, but for the grace of God, grace of true parents, victory, we can get the blessing. So the first sex was illicit. No sex in history ever had God's approval. No marriage in history was ever able to receive God's blessing. No couple ever inherited God's authorization to have children. The mission of Adam and Eve as true parents was never fulfilled. God's plan remained to be accomplished. It required a second Adam and Eve. So I used to give a lecture called The Value of the Blessing. It's not only salvation, it's the purpose of life. So I just took one slide out of there. The Jewish faith and obedience to the law. Look how many thousands of years this took to get back to this place where we could start over. It's incredible. So Jesus, one sinless child of God, made an incredible difference in the world. The Christian faith, forgiveness for sin, and adoption. We could become adopted as Christians, sons of Jesus in God. Sons and daughters. But only spiritual redemption. Jesus still was the only child of God. The original sin remained in the world. Another 2,000 years, Sun Myung Moon and Hyun Shil Kang fulfill the Adam and Eve responsibility that God needed to receive the blessing, give salvation, adoption into God's lineage. So the holy wine and the holy water, the 3-day ceremony, the indemnity stick, all those very spiritual conditions that we don't understand very deeply. Because I was in a position to teach to brothers and sisters and to ministers about the value of the blessing, teach the 3-day ceremony. What happens? What do you do? Why do you do it? I had to teach the indemnity stick to a whole bunch of people. Right? If you don't understand where Father got that from, and it's just like you're beating each other. It's completely incomprehensible what we're doing. But with an understanding that I don't know if it's true, but it feels so true spiritually, that indemnity stick represented the historical restoration for our ancestors. If you think about it, if they're looking down from the spiritual world and they see you getting blessed, do you think they think you deserve it? That all their lives they didn't get any blessings from God, they were separated from God, and suddenly you came along and you don't do anything and you get blessed? You think that's fair? Right? Or how about if you have women who were abused, sexually abused, raped in your ancestry? You had terrible relationships with their husbands. How do they feel about this blessing, this relationship? How do they feel? They're going to mess up your relationship if they hang around because of the way they feel. They hate men, for example. If that woman is your ancestor and she comes to you, you're going to hate your husband for no reason because it's her influence. So the indemnity stick ceremony is for them to see your willingness to sacrifice yourself to restore the past. That the blessing represents a restoration of it's God's grace. You don't have a big condition to do, you have a small condition. But when they see that, it moves their hearts. And they can accept your spouse. And they can accept this relationship. And they can support you after that. Ideally, of course. But that's the incredible grace that Father gave us through the indemnity stick ceremony. And I got so kind of upset with these people. Oh, it's so much fun. We're beating each other. Let's just hit as hard as you can. And just, no connection to spiritual things that Father put there. So anyway, that and the holy wine ceremony, same thing. It's just incredible, right? The holy wine is like the blood of Christ. In the holy wine is true parents' blood. We're drinking that. We're literally, it's a homeopathic type thing, but we are taking their blood into our bodies. It can change, just like homeopathic medicine can help you get over diseases. That blood changes our blood. at the time of the 3-day ceremony, you take a holy handkerchief with the blood on it and you clean your whole body. You are bathed in the blood of Christ. Right? If a Christian says, "You ever been, I'm bathed in the blood of Christ, I'm saved," you can say, "So am I." More than you, actually. This is physical redemption. Physical redemption comes through the conditions that True Father made for our salvation and our adoption into God's lineage. So now, God forgives this couple of their sins, and our children can be born sinless. Never before possible in human history. How could you be born sinless in God's eyes? That's because of what your parents did. They didn't understand it, most likely. Who did? But we did it because Father said, "This is what you do." So this really, again, this was part of what I was getting. I had understood this kind of stuff. God just showed me that we are so blessed. So God's permission is now being given for the first time in history on sexual relationships within the marriage blessing officiated by true parents. They fulfilled where Adam and Eve failed. So blessed couples have received God's approval for sex through the authority granted by true parents. God's authorization is granted to blessed couples to have children which are born into God's lineage and without original sin. Golly. In all human history, this is it. This is what God is waiting for. All mankind had no idea. This is what all history. They didn't know where we're going. This is where we were going. We are there. Now we need to understand the original design, and we need to try and do it, live it. So here, this is another thing that I had found in research. I was giving a talk on something and I looked up fertilization. What happens? There's new research about fertilization. I remember when I was young, we were taught there's the egg and the sperm come swimming in and they all attack the egg. Right? I don't know if you learned that in school. And then suddenly the egg weakens and one sperm gets in there. Right? That's probably what you heard. I don't know if what they're teaching in school nowadays. That's not true. That's not true. Research has shown, experts thought that it occurred enzymes in the head of the sperm are, attacking and stuff. Today we understand that each egg selects the sperm that it wants. So the sperm lay all over the egg. And then the egg chooses one of them and lets it in. And then, I think Hyungjin showed this one time, there's a spark, a zinc spark that goes off at the moment of fertilization. The spark of life starts. It's incredible what they're finding out now. And they're still trying to figure out how the egg, or why the egg picks a particular sperm. But the theory is that it has something to do with the immune system is the most different from the egg, so that the baby will be the most healthy. I mean, God thought of every detail. This was another thing. I was praying to God, help me understand fertilization. Help me understand what's going on here. And, we talk about how the woman was God's ideal because he wanted to have a wife, right? So in God's mind, he thought of the wife first, the woman first, before the man. So he thought about, okay, what's the reproductive cycle going to be like? And she has, once the egg comes out, if it doesn't get fertilized, it has to be getting rid of it. But in order for the egg to be fertilized, there has to be blood and mucus and all kinds of things happen every month in a woman's cycle. So God had said it, and figured, okay, if you can't have all that going on at one time, you can't have an egg. You got to wait a while for that process to take place. So the way God ended up deciding it was once a month an egg would come out. And if it's not fertilized, then it would be released, and they would have the menstruation. Okay, so so now God's got that all figured out. So then he's got to say, okay, so now I'm going to make the man. So here we go. God created, the average fertility phase is only 5 to 7 days out of every 28 days. Right? And of course, many miraculous things happen each month during the cycle. When you're preparing for pregnancy, a whole lot's going on. Your temperature goes up, and actual mucus, which helps sperm get to the egg, is formed. And you can tell the difference physically when a woman's ready she's fertile. Once released, the egg will live no longer than 24 hours unless it gets fertilized. That's a very short period of time. 24 hours is all you got to fertilize that egg each month. Non-fertile conditions, the sperm can survive an average of 3 to 7 hours. So if it's not the right time of month, the uterus is hostile to sperm. And the sperm will get killed in 3 to 7 hours. But during a female fertility phase, when during this 5 to 7 days when she's fertile, the cervical mucus that's produced, the sperm can live 3 to 5 days in the mucus. Is that unbelievable? I mean, that's a big change for the woman. That's a big hormonal change going on. But God has got that prepared. Without that mucus, the sperm could never get to the egg. So, all right. So now we got like 3 months here. So 5 to 7 days here. These are the fertilities. See, when I was praying to God about understanding this, it was like God showed me, okay, this is this. And it was like a storyboard, this one, and then this one, and then I thought about this, and then this. So that's what I'm showing you here. Over 3 months, God's creation for the fertility period looks like that for a woman. So God, how did God create the male's fertility cycle? So God thought about this. He said, I don't know if he did, but this is what he helped me understand in my understanding as an engineer. So, what if a male's fertility cycle was the same as the woman's, 5 to 7 days a month? Oops. If you marry the wrong woman, you'll never get pregnant. Right? You could totally miss if your fertility cycles don't match up. So God said, I can't do that. That would make, I can't give my children and my grandchildren that way. So it can't be that way. It can't be cyclical. The cycles might never synchronize. Then there's no babies. So God had to make men fertile every single day. A male produces, I think, 500 million sperm a day. 500 million sperm a day. A wife may feel like having sex once or twice a month for a couple of days. But the man's body produces 500 million sperm, and his body will experience that production. There's a pressure. For me, it's every 3 days. It's like clockwork. I know. I can feel it. It's coming. I know. A man feels like having sex every couple of days due to the way God designed us. Testosterone pushes us. And here's another. I was giving this talk one time, and I was talking about a man gets this increase of testosterone, and I was thinking about women just don't understand that, and I don't know why God did that anyway. And then suddenly I got this inspiration that says, like men usually they get focused on something and they don't think about anything else, right? So you don't think about your wife if you're always doing this. You're always focused on one thing or work or whatever. You never think about your wife. He says, but every 3 days you're going to have to think about your wife. So that's another byproduct of testosterone. Take care of your wife, because you'll think about her on a regular basis. So God said that's a reminder to think about your wife. Take care of your wife. All righty. That was fun. Okay, for me. These inspirations I get from God, they're great when I share them. It sounds like I do this all the time. No, they're probably 4 or 5 years in between. So, just to let you know, I'm not crazy. I mentioned to this book I talked about a little bit before. And there's lots of books out there. You can look this up, check out some of these books. What time is it? I'm going to go ahead and play this. This is 9 minutes long. And John Gray, this has been one of the most helpful things that we learned in marriage enrichment. And it's about what he calls, it's quickie sex, basically. But this is, sex isn't always this Hollywood sex, romantic thing. There's different aspects of it. There are different types of sex. And he explains it well, and he helps.
I'm not that desperate. So, what you have to do is find another way to produce those pheromones. Monogamy does it, good communication does it, romance does it, skills in bed do it, and one other thing to keep the man fully coming back to her is he never feels rejected in sex. Think of it with me. What if you went to a man and you went to talk and open up, share your feelings? And every time, maybe just 5 times, he says, I don't want to listen to this. Go talk to your girlfriend. I can't take this. Hey, talk to your therapist. I'm not going to handle this stuff. You get off it and then come back to me when you love me. Can your heart grow with him? No. Your feelings have been hurt. What happens after a while, after your feelings have been put down, stepped on, walked on, ridiculed, is you'll be with your husband. You might love him, but you have no feelings, no passion. You go to a therapist, and suddenly, even when your husband's there, you start feeling your feelings again because somebody else is there who makes it safe for the feelings to come up. Well, women are sensitive when it comes to communication. What are men sensitive? Comes to sex. When a man initiates sex, that is the most vulnerable time in his life. When he says, honey, you want to have sex? Most men are so vulnerable, they don't want to say it. They just want to start making the moves, hoping she's going to go along with it. As long as she goes along with it, great. She didn't go along with it, it's kind of like, okay, blew that one, boy. But he doesn't go, gee, that was a bummer. He just sulks a little bit, oh, it's okay, tries again another time. But what you have to know, and I interviewed men who lost their attraction for their wives. I bring them back in time, look at their sexual history. In every case, every time where the man wanted sex, back when love was glowing and shining, and after you have kids, the routine sets in, I gotta wash the dishes, I gotta handle this, I gotta do this, I gotta go do something for somebody else. And there's no time for him. Suddenly she's making everybody else's needs more important than his needs. When a woman starts making other things more important, domestic routine more important than sex, and she goes, well, how can you be thinking about sex? She doesn't know she's rejecting it. She's not in the mood for sex. Well, how can you even think about sex? We're not even having a romantic evening. What's the big deal? What's the loss? She says, no, I don't want to have sex. He goes, oh. He's kind of stunned, but he can deal with it. Tries again another time. Want to have sex tonight? No. All it takes is about 2 or 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, particularly 3 times in a row. He'll stop initiating sex the way he used to. He goes into another stage of sexual relationship. Instead of feeling free to initiate sex whenever he's in the mood, he now initiates sex when he thinks you're in the mood. So he's all the time hunting. Whenever he gets horny, is she in the mood? Is she not in the mood? Should I ask now? Should I not ask now? If I ask her, she'll say yes. Nah, I don't think she's going to say yes. Nah, it's not going to happen tonight. And every time he thinks about asking, every time he wishes it was going to happen, but he doesn't ask, guess what happens? He ends up feeling rejected. So he's not asking. She doesn't even know all these times he's being rejected. Every time he thinks about having sex and doesn't initiate sex, he feels rejected. He feels rejected. He feels rejected. It's like the woman who feels like asking for support, but she doesn't ask. She doesn't ask. See, he doesn't care. He doesn't ask. He doesn't ask. You feel rejected. The man who doesn't ask, he hopes, waits, then he asks, it's the wrong time. Boy, blew it, bummer. After a while, he doesn't feel the passion. He doesn't feel free to initiate. He doesn't feel open up and surrender his being to her because he's been rejected sexually. Women don't realize how significant that is. I didn't realize it until I started doing this study. And some things brought me to the realization. And it's the solution to the problem. It's simple. Like all these things I suggest makes an enormous difference. I'll explain it to you. Sex is like a hunger. It's like food. Different kinds of sex. There's healthy home-cooked dinner. That's a staple diet. That would be sex where the The man takes at least 20 to 30 minutes in foreplay so the woman gets orgasmic, or even has her orgasm, then has intercourse. By the way, what most men don't know, for many times, if you wait for her to have the orgasm and then have intercourse, it's more pleasurable for the woman. See, men don't know that. Some women don't even know that. So nobody ever taught them that. It's like backwards. Well, the reason it's been the other way is because men were always in a hurry to get in there. But scientifically, if you look at our bodies, when a woman reaches climax, that's when her pleasure hormones are at the maximum level. That's when she can enjoy intercourse the most at that level. And for many women, am I going to get there tonight? Am I not? Am I going to disappoint? There's a lot of anxiety in getting to orgasm. So once you got to orgasm, give her the orgasm, now make your entrance. And you know what happens after a woman has an orgasm? Vagina opens up like this, and then it contracts. Opens up, feels the emptiness, contracts, and feels, ooh, I'd like to be filled up. That's when you make your entrance. Worth waiting for, guys. Worth waiting for. Give her the orgasm, then have intercourse, and you know what? Then it doesn't matter how long you last. It could be 30 seconds, Australian style, 2 to 3 minutes, Texas style. Or if you want to pace yourself, light and conscious guy, just go slow, take little rest stops, go slow, get close to orgasm, just pause, change positions every time you get close to orgasm, then you don't always, and then build up because you're enjoying being there and you're feeling the love and expressing the love. Take longer sometimes, do short sometimes. That's healthy home-cooked sex. Staple. She gets her foreplay. If she's going to have an orgasm, she gets it. If she doesn't, it's good women to give a clue to the guy. You can say to him, honey, you know, he's going along trying to stimulate you, touching your clitoris, going along, and you realize it's not happening tonight. Just say to him, let's just have a quickie. Guy goes, he doesn't mind. Oh, great, let's just do it. Skip all that stuff. But if you don't tell him, he's busy doing this and busy doing this. 30 minutes has passed, 35 minutes has passed. She's trying to have an orgasm. He's trying to get her an orgasm. What do I do? And finally she says, give it up. Boy, he's not going to feel attracted for a long time. What a day. So basically, as soon as you realize the orgasm isn't happening, just say, hey, let's just have a quickie. So that's another kind of menu, which is junk food sex, microwave sex. Quickie, lasts 2 to 3 minutes. Put on some KY jelly, lubricate, put it in. 5 strokes, 10 strokes, he's done. He goes right to sleep, he's a happy man. Okay? That's a quickie. Quickies, healthy home-cooked sex. But many women say, I'm not going to do that quickie, that's not good. Unless we have romantic sex. So what I suggest, men, say, honey, I'll make this deal. Romantic sex, 1 day a month is your day. Like Valentine's Day, I'll take you somewhere real special, romance, making love, taking a long time. I promise you that. I promise you as much healthy home-cooked sex as you want. If I give you that, will you be okay with quickies? Can I have guilt-free quickies? Where I feel like I'm giving you what I need, and now this is your time to give me what I need? And my wife said, yeah, I'll do that. But one more condition, just don't expect me to be all excited. So I said, honey, it's okay, you can lie there like a dead log. So she lay there. She said, okay, I did it. We did it in 3 minutes, it was done. She laid there like a dead log. No noise. It was a little scary for a moment. I'm, hey, no problem, this is my Ferrari, I'm taking off. This feels great. Thank you, honey. So it was fun, I got guilt-free quickies, and then I discovered that now every time I asked her to make love, initiated sex, if she wasn't in the mood, she never rejected me. She said, well, I got a headache, or I got to make the dishes, I don't have much time, I'm kind of tired, but if you want a quickie, we can do that. I said, yes, ma'am, happy. And suddenly I was never rejected in sex. Boom, my sex drive increased. I've told this to couples again and again, they make the agreement, quickie, if she's not in the mood, she says yes to a quickie, unless she just really doesn't want to do it, then she says, I could do a quickie, but maybe I'll just do a hand job instead. I'll hold it for you, honey. Whatever. I love you, I'm just not in the mood, okay? But, you know, you can say no. You can say no, but basically this makes it so you don't ever have to say no. And you can say yes to him. You can give him that. And these men, as soon as they go, that working, something inside goes, hey, I'm never going to be rejected. Okay, let's go for this. And the sexual attraction starts coming back. And it's just a secret to making his need for sex valid, her need for longer sex and romantic sex valid. If she gets what she needs, he gets what he needs. Suddenly you have both partners completely happy. And you're working with an awareness of what does he need, what does she need. We're all perfectly normal. His needs, my needs. How can we work together to make them happen? And with this, we can fulfill our dreams, our hopes, which are to create lasting passion, increasing love, go beyond what any couples in history have ever achieved, and also find greatness in our own personal life. to integrate sexual energy with heart energy directed by our minds, become fully integrated people, and have a good time doing it. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy great sex.
I like that part at the end because I feel like God really kind of gave him the inspiration that the time we're living in is now the time to fulfill that. So just to summarize, he talked about good home cooking, regular sex, gourmet sex, taking a lot of time, 2, 3, 4 hours. I don't know, that's pretty long. Anyway, once or twice a month, probably. Date your wife. Date your wife is the most important part, I think. You spend that time together. And you plan that out. If you don't plan it, likely it won't happen. Because you get too much in our lives, we're always busy. But you have to invest in the relationship to make it really good. And then the quickie sex, a few minutes. But once we started living according to this and in our relationships, again, like he said, it's so liberating. And it's so, in the same way, fulfilling. It makes, it takes away a lot of the issues that come up between you and the disagreements and misunderstandings and stuff. This, we handled it. We figured it out. We don't have any disagreements on this anymore. And what do I want to say? She understands my needs so almost ahead of me at times. So when I start touching her more than usual, she realizes what that means. So getting back to the original ideal again, God created us to be ideal individuals, mind and body, and then to create this oneness of energy. And there is a real energy that you create as couples. As an individual, you have a certain energy field, and it extends about 6 feet outside your body. They can actually detect your heart energy with machinery that they have now 6 feet away from your body. So when you're within 6 feet of somebody, you're actually able to feel their energy. Whether you recognize it or not, there's a perception there that's taking place. So the same thing, when there's a couple and they interact, especially sexually, over a long period of time, their energy begins to really harmonize. And that's the reflection of God, and that's what your children, they find peace and happiness within that energy. If the parents are always fighting, the children are always insecure. Because that energy, they're not perceiving that harmony in their parents. We recently had the experience, 2 times people said, "You two look alike." You look like each other. What? Do you really think we look like each other? But that's something spiritual that they're picking up on, right? So that's where you want things to go in your relationship, that energy. And there are benefits for both our spirit and our physical body. So there's a whole list. I'm not going to take a lot of time for it, but for women, and these are mostly benefits for women because they have to be convinced of the benefits of sex more than men do. Yeah. So sex in marriage leads to higher levels of oxytocin, which is good for women. Sex helps you forget. Actually, the oxytocin triggers orgasm. It has an amnesia effect. You forget your troubles. You forget the things that your husband did wrong. It reduces depression for women. Women have a healthier heart because of the hormones that are released during sex. It has a calming effect. It boosts your immune system. Sex actually slows the aging process. This is all scientific research, which you can find if you look it up. Women who have more sex have higher levels of estrogen. It protects against Alzheimer's and osteoporosis. You get shinier hair and more glowing skin from the hormones. Researchers have found ingredients in semen that include mood enhancers like estrone, cortisol, prolactin, all this stuff. That's good for women. See, God made a win-win situation if you're doing this. So, you know, when we have a quickie, a lot of times after we're done, I'll say, thank you. Because basically she gave me her body for 15 or 20 minutes. Because she didn't really care, about the sex so much. And then sometimes she'll say thank you for the hormones. Sex rewires you for pleasure. Sometimes we get too focused on the problems all the time, rather than focusing on the joy and the pleasures of life. The most important benefit of sex in the eyes of God is making spiritual oneness with each other and with God. They shall become one flesh, Mark 10:8. That's God's original ideal. These are some things from the book called Act of Marriage. It was recommended when we were blessed to all sisters. My wife actually took it seriously, got a copy, read this book, and these are some of the quotes that she picked out that really helped her understand the significance of sex in our relationship. A normal, healthy man has a build-up every 42, 78 hours, produces a need for sex, physically. In the early years of marriage, frequency of sex is often the source of conflict and disagreement, usually because the wife does not share or understand a normal sexual drive. So again, this is the way God made us. It's not our fallen nature. But it leads to a lot of fallen nature and a lot of sin. But originally, God created us that way. For man, sex influences. This is very powerful. His personality, his work, his motivation, almost every other characteristic of his life. So this is very profound. This in the bed, this beginning of it all, is very powerful for men. So it's intimately linked with our ego. A sexually satisfied husband will develop self-confidence in other areas as well. But if he's a failure in bed, he really feels like a failure. He may be a great success in the world, but if he's a failure there, something in him tells him he's a failure. Right? Still. They just don't know I'm really a failure. Kind of thing. If he is a success in bed with his wife, he can often endure very big challenges in the world. Academic, occupational, social failure. But the demonstration of love from his wife, and I know this is really true in my own life. If your wife loves you, then it's almost like the rest of the world doesn't matter that much. A secure man becomes a better father, uses better judgment, improves his capacity to love the whole family. They know this in business. Married men get paid more because they're better at what they do. They learn from the marriage relationship. They learn better how to deal with people and to be more successful in business. So again, just to summarize, I think God has given us permission after thousands and thousands of years. So our mission as a blessed couple is to fulfill the three great blessings. Number 2, God's original ideal and design for marriage and sex. I'm going to give you that mission. Become an ideal couple. Become an ideal husband and wife. Become an ideal parents. If you can feel you're successful at that, then God will look at you and say, that's a success, right? That's more important than any other kind of success in the physical world. So, we're growing, always. Infinitely, we're going to keep growing in our relationship. But it's a real blessing to God and to the world if we can understand these kind of things and recognize. Really. So, again, these are the things that Father said, just as a reminder. The core of the universe. It's really it's the foundation for our relationship with God in many ways. So here's some suggestions. Just threw them all in here. As she said, my wife said during the 5 love languages, she made a conscious effort to touch me more. So we now, if we separate for a while, I'm going somewhere or she's going somewhere, we always kiss. We always. It's like if we didn't, it's all, we forgot to kiss, like you said too. Same thing. It becomes so important in your relationship. It's a small little thing, but once you have that as a, I don't know, family tradition or what, as a habit, it's like making your bed. I make my bed every day. If I get up and I leave the bed unmade, I feel like I can't leave the room. Same thing. I cannot leave her without kissing her bye and kissing her hello when I come back. So these just some suggestions, but invest in the relationship, like a date night. Talk to each other. Spend, quality time. Do something spontaneous. Come into this kind of workshop or retreat. Fantastic. Right? Stuff that you hear here, you'll come back to you again and again later. So, eat meals together, do things together, go out for coffee. When we had 5 kids, it was very difficult to have private time. But we made the effort, and we didn't have any money. So we made coffee at home. We got in the car, and we drove to some scenic place and sat there. That's right. So you can do it. You just have to decide you're going to do it, and then figure out how to do it. But the little things, you got a lot of kids, the little things just begin to add up, and you're frustrated with each other and the kids and stuff. But you go out together, and you just sit there and talk for a while, and then you talk about some of those little things, and then they become less and less important, and pretty soon they're all gone. You need to do that. It's important. You can't allow that stuff. It's like going to the bathroom. You can't, if you wait too long, you got diarrhea. You've got to get that stuff out. The spiritual junk that accumulates in relationships, you have to know the proper toilet for it. You don't want to unload your junk on somebody that can't deal with it, and your spouse or whatever the situation. So we all get poop in our lives. We have to know how to deal with it appropriately. Kids goodnight. This one, a lot of times she goes to bed before me. I'm staying up doing something. Even she's asleep, I wake her up and I kiss her goodnight. Just so she knows I got in bed with her. I don't know why, but in the beginning I was afraid to wake her up because I didn't want to wake her up. She couldn't sleep deeply. Now I don't know what it feels like if I don't kiss you. If I don't wake you up and kiss you. So, please, thank you, I'm sorry. Always. I hear couples, they don't say please and thank you. Huh? I mean, this is a human being.